Before we sign off, bud, one final thing I'm going to throw at you. The news, Jake Paul versus Tank Davis. Now, here on this podcast a few weeks ago, we talked about the possibility of Jake Paul versus Anthony Joshua. And that one got me a little excited and gave a lot of credit to Paul if it was going to happen, because he wouldn't have all the advantages that we've been accustomed to seeing him have, right? He wouldn't be the taller, the longer, the younger fighter in a lot of cases that he has.
And he'd be in with a real boxer, a real world champion boxer. That the only other time he was in, for the fans to get mad with that, was against Fury's Tommy Fury, but it wasn't that level, obviously, and all the size things you just rightfully pointed out. But he would have been in there with, it seemed crazy. You're going to go in there with a guy who was a two-time heavyweight champ and a gold medalist? Wow. Even though the guy's, at a twilight part of his career, still.
And you've given a lot of credit and props to Jake Paul on this show of helping get more eyeballs to the sport, but the way he takes it serious and goes about his approach and his work to this craft, that he does take it seriously. With that being said, when he announces Tank Davis, I'm getting tired of these gimmick fights and him loading the deck up. Whether it was Chavez Jr. or an old Mike Tyson, or we could go on and on with some of the UFC guys and the great Anderson Silva at 46 years of age. Tank Davis, great fighter, current fighter, world champion. We know how good he is. Been a top 10 pound-for-pound guy for you for the last few years now. But he's 5'5" and 135 pounds. This sounds like it would be a 195-pound fight, an exhibition. Wouldn't count on their records. Not a whole lot of other details other than it will be in November, and it sounds like in Atlanta. But I've said enough. I just want to hear your take. What do you make of this news of Jake Paul and Tank Davis?
But, and I'm smiling a little bit. But back in the day, I love the 1800s, 1700s, my friend out there, 1700s, whatever. But I love the old-time fighters. They were catch weights. And there was guys like Sam Langford. I know Sam Langford shouldn't even be comparing him with this because he's so special. But, where Sam Langford beat heavyweights. He fought from lightweight to heavyweight and beat heavyweights. They're back in the day when you had a lot of great fighters fighting each other in catch weights. You did have some smaller guys fight bigger guys, and you had them. You had success in spots. So I'm half with tongue in cheek, but I'm half serious because I've been in the boxing business 50 years. If anything's sold, it would be this. What if Tank Davis, who can punch, who is a hell of a fighter, who is a top 10 pound-for-pound fighter, what if he lands a punch on this bigger guy's chin, right, who's not a professional fighter? What happens? That's what would sell it. I know the size difference is what creates the problem. The optics, the look, the reality. You got one guy who's fights at 135 pounds, and you got another guy who fights at 200. Just that alone, yeah. But you also, and I'm not saying I want this or I like this when I heard it. No, I didn't like it, to be honest, for the optics and everything else I just said. But you do have one guy who, yeah, he's smaller, but he's a top fighter. He can punch. And he's fighting a guy who's not a top pro fighter, who's bigger. What if he hits him on the chin? It'll wind up selling. And that's what'll wind up selling it. The what if. What if Tank makes him do a cha-cha? He hits him on the chin, and Jake Paul, we're going to find out if he can dance. Whoa. Do the cha-cha. That's what's going to sell it. And you can't argue that what if. You can't. I know I get to places that other people won't go and everything else, that just dismiss stuff because it's easier to do that. It's safer to do that. You don't have to bows and arrows coming at you from people that argue with you because you did that. But I don't care. I've had bows and arrows my whole life. I don't care. But that's true. That what if? What if this guy who is a real good puncher, who is one of the best fighters in the world right now, what if he hits him? What if he makes a miss and he counters him? Or he jumps up in the air. Jump up in the air. Bang! And he hits him. Sid Terrace. Sid Terrace was a great fighter. No, not the 1700s, but years ago. And Cus D'Amato told me he loves Sid Terrace. He said, Teddy, he used to jump up in the air and hit you with 3 jabs. I said, whoa, man, Sid Terrace. All right. Anyway, look, I can't finish without saying that it did invoke some memories and thoughts that we've been here before in a different way, where Jake Paul's brother fought Mayweather. That's not forget. And I'm not saying I like that either. I mean, first of all, Mayweather was past his prime. He was already retired. He was older, everything, but he's still the great Mayweather. And Mayweather was fighting a guy, what was it, 50-pound difference, 60-pound difference, whatever it was. And that size made a difference. It allowed Jake Paul's brother to be in there and be able to last with a smaller man, a smaller, older, greater fighter who's mostly was concentrating on defense more than just offense. So, yeah. It's kind of like we've seen this already in that version of it, and we didn't really like it. I don't think I liked it that much, to be honest with you. But here we are. Here we are. Like Don King would say, only in America. Ha, 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 ha. That's Don King.
Yeah, Tank Davis, but I get a little upset with Tank. I understand it from
No, he's not
Jake's
fighting
side.
Roach, right? He's not fighting Roach. That's got to be a problem, right?
Should be a rematch, right? In a fight that was a draw, and a lot of people thought he might have lost. To want to get the redemption, to want to, get the rematch with that fight. But how about Shakur Stevenson? How about a million other fighters out there that we could name? And we feel cheated, just as a boxing fan, that instead we're going to get this gimmick fight instead of one of those real fights. The last thing I'll finish it and ask you is...
You're not wrong. You're not wrong. I can't argue any of that. I'd rather see the rematch with Roach. I'd love to see him with Shakur. I'm not arguing. Not arguing.
Yeah, and the last thing I'll just leave you with, to piggyback off of that, is will this be the end of Tank Davis's career? And I'm not saying he loses. I'm just saying from the standpoint of how do you go from 135 pounds to 195, and then where do you go from there? To put on that much weight and that much muscle to try to be able to move back down?
Well, that's where I disagree with you, bud. I think he ain't putting weight on. He ain't going to put weight on. I mean, I don't think he will. If he does, I think he's making a mistake. I agree with you 100%, bud. But I don't think he will. I think Mayweather didn't really put weight on when he fought a brother. He came in whatever, probably around 150-something. And he was Mayweather. He made a miss. It didn't matter. He couldn't hit him clean. And, and he did what he did. I don't see Tank Davis... I think it would be a mistake if he tried to put the weight on. I don't see him putting really weight on. He might come in. I don't know what he walks around. He fights at what, 135 pounds?
Yeah, he's not a big guy to begin with. He probably can't put too much on.
No. Let's say he walks around at welterweight. Maybe he does. Maybe a little less. But maybe he does. I see him coming in at welterweight. I do not see him coming in any heavier than that. So to your point, you're 100% right, because you're thinking right. If he did put that weight on and then tried to take it off, kind of like what happened to Roy Jones Jr., that hurt him.
When he moved up to heavyweight and then went back down.
He fought John Ruiz, moved up, won the heavyweight title. People forget that. He won the heavyweight title against John Ruiz, and then he came back down. I think that did hurt him physically.
That's a great point. There's a lot of good points there, and we'll be circling back as that fight gets closer. But
I'll leave you with one thing. What if? Go ahead. I'm sorry. I had to say that. What if? What if he jumps up in the air? And again, look, we could knock. We could do this. We could do that. We're not knocking. We're pointing stuff out. But if the money's there and someone's going to pay someone to fight a fight that in their mind is not dangerous, Tank's looking at it like I'm getting a paid all kinds of money to fight this exhibition with a guy who's not, even though he's big, he's not a top profile. Man, how can I say no? How do you look a gift horse in the eye? How do you walk away from it? And so in that way, you kind of understand, like, you're going to throw money at these guys like that. You understand the money part, but you understand the part you put out there, that the fans put out there, that they don't, it takes away in their mind from the integrity of the sport, and that you're cheating the sport that's done well for you, and the fans that are part of the reason you've done well, that they've been there to support you and support the sport, and that they want to see real fights. They want to see the fights you just mentioned. They want to see Roach. A lot of people thought Roach won. They want to see Shakur, especially after Shakur looked the way he did in his last fight, which was good, because he mixed offense with defense.